guys, so it's time to do another tutorial, and this time we'll be doing something based on ReactJS. We'll be exploring the power of composite components. So this pattern can be seen as an advanced React pattern, but it may be something which is quite easy to apply, and you may find it easy or useful, which is what I meant, in your own project. So without further ado, let's get dived in. So now we'll have the overview of the actual composite component pattern. You can see here I have a UI. Please excuse how bad it looks. I don't want to spend time on making that look pretty and rather focus on the code itself. So before I go into showing this, let me just show an old example of a common example of what people may be used to using. Say if they wanted to render the app bar, they would pass in a boolean, and then things like the primary or the left CTA, the secondary CTA even, they would pass in the components, and the page title, it would be like a prop, pass in as a string, and then the content of the layout. Now this is all fine and well until this list starts growing. It can get hard to manage, or for instance, if I wanted to add in a custom icon or another button in between these, I would have to then edit this admin layout and then start handling this extra logic, which may result in me having to add even more props into this list so we can handle these edge case scenarios. So this is where composite components come in to save the day. Now you can see here, this looks a bit daunting at first, but we'll go through this one by one, and then hopefully you'll start to understand this concept and the different possibilities it can unlock in your future projects. So you can see here I have an app bar. I can easily just remove it here. Now, again, in this example, if I wanted to access more props in this app bar, I probably have to hand in app bar styles and things like this. Here, the beauty is I have access to the app bar's props straight away from here. So I believe because this is MUI, we have access to the SX prop and everything else that it has, such as all the events on double click. And you can see here I have this view header, which is this top part of this page. So if I was to remove that, vanish, there we go. So, and then this has been split into two sections, the left and the right for CTAs. So you can see here I have this one called title. Now this is nice because the styling of this title is constrained to whatever we've defined within our layout component. So all other pages you use will be keeping design consistency. Now, furthermore, going on to the right hand side with the CTAs, it's the same story. We have very specific components here. Also, the content is just here, so we're free to add whatever we want in the actual page itself. Now, you may be wondering, isn't this more code? Doesn't this look more complicated? And at first, yes, it may seem so, but you'll see the true power when you start wanting to add in custom edge cases. For instance, if I needed to only on this page add in an extra div and add in a button or an icon, I still have the freedom and the flexibility of doing this and adding in more in any different position. Yet again, I also have the power here, like for instance, if I wanted to add something in before the title or after, I can still do that just the same by adding in extra divs, and I won't have to edit the actual component itself. Now this is great for when, not only for layouts, but you'll come to find when you're building other types of components, you're starting to get a lot of flexibility and different possibilities in how you can approach to when it comes to component design. We can just comment out things we don't want, and I believe I showed the header. If I remove this, I'm not sure what's going to happen, but there we go, so it all goes to the side. Just noticed my text is maybe a bit too small, so I'm going to enlarge it a bit. There we go. Now another thing where I find is useful is using TypeScript along with this pattern, because as I'm starting to drill down these different components using dot notation, I'm able to see what things are available. As you can see here, there's the primary and the secondary CTA. And not only do we get that, but of course, we also get our standard typing on the different props which we're able to use on these components. So without further ado, let's go and check out the code. So as I said, I'm using TypeScript here, It took me a while to find a decent and sane way of typing these components. For now, we'll just avoid all the TypeScript part and just move on to the actual components themselves. So here you can see, this is how I'm starting to define this hierarchy of the different components. I'm exporting the list view, which is the main component itself. And then you can see I have these different sections such as header, content, app bar, which you can see here, view.header, view.content, and view.appbar. And then again, nested further down, I had like a left and right header, which had different components in themselves. And this is how that's done here. I'm going off header, header.left, header.right, and so on. Came out a bit wrong. Now here are the actual components themselves. There's nothing here too special, it's just that you get to define each component how you want, such as here is the title where I'm using the typography component from MUI, and also the primary and secondary buttons, which I'm also using the MUI buttons. Now a thing you can note here is I can pass in the types from the MUI library itself straight into these components, so then I don't really have to mess around with adding in extra typing, and it makes it very simple to use. The same goes for the app bar, which should be somewhere. So here you can see I'm importing a app bar component from another part of my application. So this allows us also to import other parts of our application into this composite component itself, where you can see I'm adding it to the list view and just importing this up from above, while all these other ones are components which I have here. So this is great as a complementary to the Brad Frost atomic design pattern, such as using atoms, molecules, and organisms. You can start using the same methodology and applying it to your composite components, and then you can start opening up a world of opportunities as to how you can build things moving forward. So now I'll go into the actual type interfaces used for this type of component pattern. It took me a little while to find a fine balance of something which was easy to use without getting lost in different types of weird typing in TypeScript, because that can sometimes get a bit out of hand. And I found this pattern here to be quite simple and something which doesn't make you feel, what's the word? Couldn't think of anything, so I'm just gonna say lazy. Like, you won't feel too lazy when you have to build new components using this. And yes. Right, so this is the main component here, the list view, which is the whole parent of this whole component. And you can see here I'm adding on this header, button, app bar, and content to it. So this is how this allows me to then do this without getting any type errors. So if I was to do my own thing, TypeScript's going to complain because cheese does not exist on list view. So this is why I add this type up here. And then also you can see here, since the header is also using the similar pattern where I have header.left, header.right, the type for this is another one of these extended types. So as you can see here, we can nest this further down as far deep as we need to go. So on the header, I have a left and a right. But then I'm also referencing another type of these types, so that I can put a title on the header left. So as you come down to here, you can see header left dot title, and this typing is all happy because of the way of this hierarchy and of how we've referenced these types between the different composite components. So here you can also see I'm just adding on the typing for the app bar itself. Since this isn't anything nested and it's just a component itself, same goes for the button. I've added this here, which allows us to have access to this from the component outside in the consuming component. So as I said, you saw I had a button type, so I can actually access the button here, and this is the one there. I'll get all of the typing as well, as we added it directly in from the MUI library. And you can see this button is now rendered here. And this is available here because I've put one at the top level, because just for the sake of maybe you want to use different buttons in different areas. And it's simply just added on here as random button. Would I need to do this? Now I've added this here because I wanted to keep the height consistent with the other ones, but we could actually not even have to have this component and do this again. So we're just importing it directly in from the MUI library. This is probably going to go a bit weird now, but okay, nice. Oh, because of the height on these. But yeah, so now you can see I can just directly import other components from other parts of my app or libraries, add in the type simply here, and I get access to all the typing in these components for free. Right, so that was just a quick tutorial. Hopefully this gives you an idea of how to build these components. Now, you can imagine how you could use this for building a form controller, which will allow you to have all your styles and labels and error handling all handled within these components, so then you wouldn't have to keep reusing this in other pages. And then forms are one of the things which I loathe the most in web development, so I use this pattern whenever I can, as it makes forms, I'm not going to say it, yeah, I'm going to ignore that, but anyway, as it makes forms more enjoyable to work with. I got lost off track there. Also, another thing to mention is when we start building more complex components, I might do a part 2 of this tutorial where we start incorporating state management, because now there are going to be times when you might want the list view to have context and data about the other components themselves. So this is when we'll start using React contents and React context and the reducer library, so we can start building a component level state management system. So this is something which I might do in part 2 of this tutorial, depending on the feedback I get. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Okay, that was awkward. So that's the end of this tutorial. Hopefully you've learned something here. I know that the way I delivered this was a bit messy. I didn't prepare a script and did this all off the top of my dome. I wanted to try to get out a quick video, which I think may be useful for other people to use, because this component pattern can be really powerful and you can start applying it in many different ways throughout your application. So with no further ado, I'm done here. This is Deadlifts and Donuts. Deadlifts and Debugs.